Hey there, writer rebels. Have you ever considered expanding your authorship by starting or joining a shared world project? Well, today I'm going to talk about some things you should definitely consider if you're thinking about jumping into a multi-author project. Hello everyone, I'm Scarlett Kol, young adult author, tuber, and storyteller, and welcome to my channel. If you've never been here before, it's Thursday, which means it is writing advice time. Today we are going to be talking about something that's a little bit more on the publishing side of writing, and that is shared world projects. The reason I wanted to be talking about shared world projects today is because I have a release in a shared world project that comes out on Wednesday. It's actually a series of 4 books that will be coming out next Wednesday, the following Wednesday, the Wednesday after that, and the Wednesday after that in a project called Kingdom of Fairy Tales. It's a very interesting project in that there's 52 books in the entire shared world series, and I will be sharing it with 10 other authors. So each of us are basically writing a season of that shared world. So my 4 books will tell one story, but it also fits within a larger world that will tell a story between all 52 books. So obviously this is a very large undertaking, and we've been working really hard on promoting this project. So my 4 books, are based on Beauty and the Beast, and they are King of Beasts, Heir of Beauty, Throne of Betrayal, and God of Illusion. So I'm very excited about this project, and I have been involved in some other projects that didn't actually come to fruition, or I know some other people who've done shared world projects. But one of the things that I've been asked the most now that I've been involved in this Kingdom of Fairy Tales is, how did you get involved in that? Did you enjoy it? How do I do something like that as an author myself? So I wanted to talk to you guys about some shared world projects, because there are a lot of options out there for things that you can do, or maybe you're interested in starting something yourself. So what exactly is a shared world? A shared world project is going to be something where all of the authors contributing in some sort of fashion are going to have their stories linked together. You've probably seen this a lot in contemporary romance, where you'll see small town romance where you'll have like a hockey team or fire station where all of the characters kind of get their own books. They can be more entwined than that or less entwined than that based on the characteristics of the project. As I go through the different things to consider, these are some of the things that you will be able to think about as you go through and make the decision of whether or not you want to be involved in a shared world project. Something where you're writing something completely independent is more of a box set, which really isn't a shared world project. But if you are interested in box sets, I have done several of those as well. So just leave a comment below and maybe I can do a video on that as well. But some of these considerations will also be things you would want to consider before joining a box set as well. However, each of these projects I find is structured very differently depending on how the organizer wants to put it together. So there's definitely some things to consider when you're taking a look at how a shared world project will fit within your author brand and how you want to run your author business. So I will give a little bit more description about my books later in case you are interested, but I know a lot of you come here for the writing advice. So let's get to that first. So the first thing you need to consider when you're looking at a shared world project is your commitment level. Many shared world projects could be very large or very small, so you need to know exactly what you're signing on for before you do that. Usually with most shared world projects, they're going to assume a certain amount of effort on your part for marketing, but what exactly are they looking for you to do? So there's different levels of commitment that you need to consider. One of these is story length. How much time are you going to be putting into your story? If it's a 10,000 word story, then maybe not so much. If they're expecting a 70,000 word novel or 70,000 word novels, then obviously that's going to take more time away from your other projects. Is that going to fit in the timeline with your other projects? Maybe if you're just starting out, it's not going to impact anything. But if you're in the middle of a series, if that's going to be taking you away from that, maybe that's something you need to consider that you either need to prepare your readers for if it's something that you really, really want to do, or that maybe this is something that you want to pass on because of the amount of story that you're going to need to produce. A second thing you need to consider is how much do you need to produce? So like I said, it could be one 10,000 word story, like in an anthology of sorts, or it could be, like I said, 3 novels. There are some that I've seen that are multi-year projects. So you are going to commit to doing maybe 15,000 words, but you need to do it for 3 consecutive years. So a lot of that will play into how much time you're going to be spending on those stories and how much you're going to be taking away from your other author business to do that. The second level of that is marketing. So how exactly are they going to be marketing this project? Do they have a lot of backing? Are they going to be doing it by ads? Have they already got that all figured out? Or is everybody going to be pitching in? Do you need to be doing just regular social media posts? In the case of the Kingdom of Fairy Tales, we've all kind of taken on different roles. So if you haven't checked it out, I am running their YouTube channel on top of my own YouTube channel. So every Friday, I'm producing content for them. I will leave that in the description box below if you do want to check it out. I wear a lot of tiaras and it's very, very fun. But I am working on that sort of thing. One of the other authors is working on their Twitter account. There's a lot of people that are doing various different things to market this series. So obviously, a series of 52 books, even though it was only 4 30,000 word novels for me, I'm committed for the entire year to make sure that we're producing content and producing stuff for marketing to make sure this set is going to be successful from beginning to end. This is something you definitely want to consider before you sign on, because if you are going to be committing yourself for a year or 2 years or 3 years, then this is going to be something that's going to be a bigger issue to your author business and something that you need to understand the full commitment before you take that on. Another thing to consider is cost. A lot of these shared world projects will have a buy-in. So what is a buy-in for? Typically, that money should be going towards marketing of the set, buying the covers, any editing that's required. There's some sets that they will not have a buy-in, but you are required to get your own piece professionally edited. That is going to cost you out of pocket. So you do need to consider those things in the contract before you sign it. So even though maybe you're only paying $10 to get into this shared world project, you might have to be shelling out hundreds of dollars in editing, or maybe you need to provide your own cover. If you're providing your own covers, that could be anywhere between $50 to $300 for a relatively average cover. So those costs can definitely add up and wouldn't be something that you would have known from the outset. So when you are considering a shared world project, be sure that you are aware of all of the things that you are committing to and all of the things that they're going to be expecting. If they're expecting professional editing, if they're expecting a professional cover, and in some cases you would pay for the cover, but they would choose the cover artist for you, that could really tie your hands on what that's going to cost. So always be upfront with that, and any of the people that are organizing a shared world should be able to answer that pretty readily. If not, then maybe that's something you need to be a little leery of, that maybe these are not people that you want to be dealing with. And in terms of those marketing dollars that you're paying in, what kind of marketing are they planning to do? Are they planning to do ads on Facebook or AMS? Are they planning to, apply for a book club? Are they planning to use that for, print ads or something in a magazine? Are they planning to do paid reviews? What are they using those dollars for? It's very important to understand where your dollars are going, because if you want to be running a successful author business, you're obviously trying to get the best ROI or return on investment as possible. So every dollar that you're spending, you're going to want to try to make sure that you're at least kind of earning that back or on par. There are projects where you could actually lose money, and you might even choose to go into it knowing that you will lose money just for the exposure or the opportunity to work with certain authors or to address a certain topic. But you just need to make sure that you are making those choices fully informed, as opposed to getting involved in this project and signing a contract and not realizing everything that's going to cost you. And speaking of costs, this leads me into the next thing that you need to consider when considering a shared world project, and that is rights and payment. There are various different ways that a shared world project could be set up. It could be a group of authors that want to do something, let's say, in a particular town. However, every author who produces the book will self-publish it on their own on a particular day to be involved with that project. Anything they make from that book will go directly to them, and the organizer or publisher is not directly involved with payment or with the rights of the book. Or it could be completely the opposite perspective, in which you are dealing with somebody who is running it, or the when I refer to publisher, I will refer to them as like either a publishing company or the person organizing the shared world, just to keep that simple. But either the publisher is in control of everything. They own all of the stories, and they will choose to pay you either on a individual basis, or I have also seen where you will do it on a shared basis, such as if you have 5 authors in the shared world, that they will all get a fifth of the profits. Understanding exactly how you're going to get paid is very important because some of these projects can go for a long period of time. Plus, there's usually a delay in payment from when you start a project, so you need to know exactly what you can be expecting, and especially if there had been a buy-in, whether or not you're going to be making that money back or whether that makes sense. If you are a bigger author, then obviously money on your own book is probably going to do a little bit better. However, if you are a author that has nothing published so far, or you have a relatively small name and you're doing this for exposure, then maybe something that's going to be shared would be a little bit better because you could be in a very successful set. But if your book in particular isn't selling well, then you aren't going to be making much off this project. Like I said, there are other considerations such as exposure or working with bigger name authors or publishers, but you do need to know that you are making that choice and what those costs are going to be and exactly how you are going to get paid from this organization. The other thing in that is contractual rights. Do you own the rights to any of your characters? So any characters that you are writing into the set, if your fans love it and eat it up, can you continue that? Can you do sequels? Can you write a short story as a reader magnet on your newsletter? Or does the publisher own the rights to all of those characters? Because if they do, you will not be able to continue that series. You will not be able to expand on it, and there's nothing else you can do with it. That may be perfectly okay if this is something that you just want to do and move on. But if you're thinking that you want to grow this world, then this could be a problem. It's also something to really understand going into it, because if you know that there's something that you're probably going to expand on, you're not going to want to write that into the story because you're going to handcuff yourself and not be able to do anything with it because you will not own the rights to those characters or those worlds at all. I know some publishers and owners of various different groups and shared worlds will do this kind of as a community understanding, but in most cases there will be a contract outlining these sorts of details. If you have not received a contract, you are fully within your rights to ask the publisher exactly what you have your rights to and exactly how you are going to get paid. If they cannot answer these questions in a straightforward manner, you really need to consider if this is something that you want to align yourself with, because you could end up into a lot of trouble a lot later. This comes into play a lot more if the higher your commitment level is. Like I said, if you're writing a 10,000 word story, yes, that's your work. But if that's the only thing you're contributing and something goes south, then it's not as much of a loss to you because you didn't commit as much time and as much work into the project. However, if you are committing entire novels to a publisher and they've chosen not to pay you, or it's not exactly how you agreed upon, or something like that, you could be losing a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of patience dealing with those people. So it is really, really important that you're very clear on what your rights are and how you're going to get paid before you start. They may not be ideal situations, but you should be able to make your decision based on the truth. Another thing to think about is creative license. So when you get into a shared world, the whole point of it is to be shared. So all of the authors within a group, depending on how big or small the group is, are going to have some sort of connection between their stories. Some of them can be very tight and some of them can be very loose. And in particular, how much wiggle room do you have within your story? I was involved in a shared world project that I didn't end up doing, but basically it was very, very wide open. It was based on a historical event. So the, I guess, history and shared world was public knowledge, and you would obviously want to base that as much on actual historical event as possible. You were given a character, and then you basically had free reign to do whatever you wanted. There were platforms to be able to talk to the other authors if there's some things you wanted to try and mix together, but essentially you were given complete carte blanche as to what you wanted to do. I've also been in other series where there's a lot more specific things that you need to do. Your plot can be based on anything, but you needed to have this event happen at the end. It had to be exactly this character, and this happened, and this happened, and this needs to happen in your story and needs to show up somewhere. Those can be very, very restricting. And if you aren't used to dealing with restrictions like that, it can make things very difficult. In my current Kingdom of Fairy Tales project, it was kind of a little bit of both. We were actually presented with all of the different characters. The worlds were created for us in general, and we were given a general outline that was in some places specific and in some places very broad. I have entire chapters that basically had 2 lines of an outline. So we were given the instruction of being able to do whatever we wanted with it, as long as we kept, I think it was about 5 main points that needed to stay for our characters that they created, and that they had to have a specific end point that we needed to deal with that was actually outside of the actual story. So we needed to maintain a couple of touch points that linked into the higher story. So for us, we were allowed to add any characters we wanted. We were allowed to add any subplots we wanted. If there was something in the outline we didn't like, we could fix it. We could scrap the entire outline. It didn't really matter. It was basically a very open-ended kind of partnership in which we were allowed to do various different things and have a lot of creativity in what we were doing, as long as we stuck to some very relatively understandable guidelines. After that, the project was turned back over to the organizers, who would go through every single book to maintain continuity. If there was something that did not work for them, they would contact the author, and we would either work on a rewrite or something to fix that to work in with the larger story. So that was kind of a little bit in between, is we didn't have full creative license, but on the same note, we weren't completely restricted in exactly what we needed to write. This is something you do need to think about, because if you are not a very seasoned writer, you might find this very difficult to follow somebody's guidelines. Also, if you are a veteran author, you might not want to listen to other people's guidelines. You might want to have more creative license because it doesn't fit with your voice. So this is something that you need to know about yourself before you're signing on, and to understand exactly how much commitment you have. One of the things that I found tricky with the Kingdom of Fairy Tales set is that every book is exactly 7 chapters, and each chapter is approximately around the same amount of words. I found this very, very difficult because I actually write very short chapters, and these chapters were quite long. I could break things down into scenes, but it really threw things off mathematically in terms of how that book was supposed to work. Plus, each chapter is actually a separate day, so making sure that each chapter finished a particular day within that amount of time frame was very difficult sometimes. So I did find a lot of challenges, especially towards the end of the series, where I was trying to, race to the finish and get through the climax, but making sure that time was passing. This is not something I would normally need to consider when I'm writing a book on my own, because I just wouldn't do that to myself. So you do need to consider what your restrictions are going to be and how much creative license you're going to get. This may sound like a downfall, but the fact of the matter is some of this stuff is actually really refreshing. To have an outline started for me for Kingdom of Fairy Tales, it was fantastic. It already gave me a story to work with. It actually sped me up at the beginning there of trying to piece everything together. We already had a character, we already had a character flaw, we had things to work with, and I could jump right into that project without having to spend as much time outlining as I would need to do for a project on my own, because I already had this preset starting block from which to work with. So there are benefits and there are negatives to working with a shared world. It could speed you up significantly, or it could impede your process because you get frustrated by the various different restrictions. So you need to know how you work and how you're going to be able to move within this process and what exactly is flexible. Yet again, if you do not understand what the creative license or flexible points are going to be in this project, you need to talk to your organizer. And the last thing you want to think about before getting into a shared world is who exactly you're associating yourself with. I'm not trying to sound snobby by this. There's actually a couple of considerations of why this would matter. Like I kind of mentioned back in terms of cost and payment, if this is not a reputable publisher or an author's organizing it that you don't know very well, there is a possibility that maybe things don't go well. You could lose your buy-in. They could cancel the project. They could change the rules on you. So if that group or organizer or publisher has a good reputation and you've talked to other authors who've dealt with them, or you've dealt with them before, you're going to know whether or not you can essentially trust getting into an agreement with these people. In terms of the Kingdom of Fairy Tales projects, I had done a few box sets with this group already, so I already knew how they dealt with things business-wise, and I did trust them to be able to get into a project this big. If the project isn't very big and it's only, a handful of stories or a lower word count, you might be willing to take that risk to try and get the exposure. The second thing is also the authors that are going to be involved in the shared world. Not that I have a problem with any other authors. The issue is if maybe you write squeaky clean young adult. If all of these authors are erotica authors, then this could highly impact the also bots on your Amazon, because people will be buying from those other authors and then hopefully from you. And depending on how you're willing to deal with your audience on what the content is in the book that you're in. So if it's more of an anthology piece where everybody's putting in shared world projects into one single book, or you want people to read the full series, but you are in a situation where there's going to be some very, very steamy books in there, you might be concerned about whether or not you want to promote that to your audience. On the flip side as well, if you are writing steamy erotica kind of things and you're got into a group of all young adult clean authors, then that's not going to be what your readers are expecting either. They're going to go into this series wanting to read your piece, but it's not going to be successful for the series. And if you're in, like, say, the middle of the shared world, or it doesn't stand alone enough on its own, then it's going to be a problem because your readers aren't going to like the rest of the series. If this is something you're wanting to branch out in, then go for it. If it's something you're interested in doing, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's something that you definitely need to consider in terms of your author business is, are your readers actually going to read this series based on the other authors that are in the set? And do you trust the people organizing or publishing the set enough to take that chance? So hopefully this is giving you some food for thought on shared world projects. Personally, I have really enjoyed the shared world project that I've been involved in. They are people that I trust, and the group of authors that I am working with are all fantastic. And I am really looking forward to getting to meet some of them at the 20 Books Conference in November. Fingers crossed that it still happens. So like I said, the Kingdom of Fairy Tales is 52 books that were started releasing on January 1st, 2020, and will release every Wednesday all the way through the entire year. Each 4-book season is based on a different fairy tale. So we started with Sleeping Beauty, and there's 4 books that tell a full, complete story. However, those 4 books also tie into a larger 52-book arc. Then we moved on to another fairy tale with another author, and so on down the line. We are now in the 6th season, which is my season, which is based on Beauty and the Beast. So all of these characters are fairy tale characters 18 years after the original Happily Ever After. In this case, my main character is Prince Fallon, and he is the son of Beauty and the Beast. So he is a little bit of an arrogant, spoiled prince, and he is basically going to get his comeuppance in this book when he needs to start taking a little bit more responsibility in the castle, as his father ends up having some old habits, maybe some old furry beastie type habits. So if you are interested in that, I will put the link in the description box below. Before I go though, I also want to remind you that this Saturday, only 2 days away, is the live write-in for the Author Tube Writing Virtual Retreats. So I'm very excited to be doing a panel on virtual retreat writing hacks. So if you want to join me, the schedule is also in the description box below. We have some really great author tubers that will be there. Some will be doing panels like I will be doing, discussing various different things like cover design. I'm doing writing sprint hacks. There's some people who are talking about like the Pit Mad Twitter contest for pitching your book. And then there's the other piece of it where they're actually going to be doing live write-ins, so you can actually do writing sprints with some of the author tubers out there and get some words out as well. Plus, as I mentioned in my video last week, there will be prizes. So if you are checking into the lives or to the panels, there will be some prizes that will be given away, and you will just have to check that out to find out what that is. But I do promise you they will be fantastic. Hopefully you will join us, and if not, well, I will see you next week. If you are not a subscriber to this channel, please make sure you're hitting that red subscription bar and the notification bell if you'd like to get an email the next time I put out a video. If you did like this video and would like more content like it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. That really does help my channel because it tells YouTube that people are enjoying this video and they will recommend it to others, and we can grow our little community here. So if you ever have any recommendations on videos you would like to see, please leave that in the comments below and I will check it out. Otherwise, I will see you next Thursday, and you guys have a wonderful week.